everyone, and welcome to Around the Payload, brought to you by High Noon Podcast. I am your host, the Blevins. All right, let's start this off right away. That's minus 5 points right off the bat for Deathblow. I'm your host, the Blevins, and I am joined today by a star-studded cast of guests. We are starting off with returning guest Gillfrost, aka Left Guy, esports producer and premium Overwatch personality. What's up, man?
Oh, not a mucho. Ready to lose probably against ZP.
Also joined today for the first time is KickedTripod, who hacked ZP's answer, so he hopes he goes first. But he is, of course, the host of Overwatch League Daily. What's up?
So Gillfrost and I today spent some time collaborating on our answers to try and take down ZP, but
we have not had a team offensive happen yet until now.
Why is this conspiracy going on? I was not aware.
I told my friends, I go, yeah, I'm going against ZP, and they're like, oh, you're screwed. And I'm like, cool, great.
Yeah, I got no fewer than 300 messages from Kicked over the past week being like, dude, I can't do this. I can't. I'm like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
You put me in with like the guy who talks about Open Division again. I'm just kidding. Thorn Rain.
Got him.
I hate to do it, Kicked, but that's 2 points. Plus, okay.
He's gone and he's out and he's a showman.
I know how to do this game now. I've got it. I know how to do this game now.
Oh god. Oh no, I have the points messed up. Okay, but we'll figure it out. I'm giving ZP points.
Wow, what a great tally.
Oh man. Okay,
this is a conspiracy. You can hack his answers, but you can't have your points.
He just hotkeyed every point to ZP because he was just expecting that to happen.
I expect nothing.
Let's at least get through the introduction before the show breaks down. Also joined another returning guest, Deathblow, co-host, of course, of High Noon Podcast, as well as a host of the new show, FOWL Play, about fantasy Overwatch, and a super fan, blah, 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 blah. What's up, buddy?
Greenwell! If I talk, I'm going to lose points, so I'm going to keep it brief.
So you've already lost a couple. And, of course, the much alluded to man with the golden voice, the golden balls on his Zen, and the golden guns on his main, which is Widowmaker, the one and only ZP. What's up, man?
None of this is true, but it is good to be here.
Oh, come on. Tell me you're not a Widowmaker.
I do enjoy playing Widow, but it's more McCree and Tracer nowadays. But hey, first points, let's go.
Yeah, let's actually get into the show. We've already had over 10, just about 10 points divvied out, and the show has not even started yet. I honestly should have taken more away from Deathblow. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with the show, if you know what Around the Horn is, it's basically a very similar but legally different version of Around the Horn for Overwatch and Overwatch League. So let's get right into the first round. If the sound would ever play. Well, the sound I'm sure is playing somewhere, but let's just get right into it. We're starting off with the Shanghai Dragons in yet another little bit of conspiracy, so to speak. The Dragons coach, U4, was fined almost $10,000 for promising league spots to underage players. And Left Guy, we'll start with you. Does the punishment fit the crime? What do you think about this whole situation?
Well, I think you have to. I mean, I think it's good that they were able to isolate that and punish it. It sounds like there might be more behind the scenes, more of a pattern of behavior that they're addressing here, because that is a ridiculously high-sounding fine. Now, I'm not an expert, but it's unprecedented. The difficulty there of calling something like this unprecedented is that we haven't really seen much of this happening in Overwatch yet, since it's still in its infancy. But it does seem like a bit much. I am glad that they nipped this one at some point because, esports and especially Overwatch League, we need to maintain that image very well, because a lot of the future of Overwatch and just esports at large does hinge on.
Gotcha. ZP, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
So the only thing I'd say here is that anytime you have an organization get far out ahead of potential punishment and go, no, we're going to punish first. Sometimes it's a good and honorable thing. And sometimes it's the case where you're admitting to the lesser crime because you don't want people to dig deeper. I don't know what it is here. I mean, it could be a case where there's skeletons in his closet. Who knows? But I think the clear intent here is sort of going, look, we've punished him. Please don't investigate further, which, by the way, if you go back to the statements I think Nate has made here, you have the idea where it sort of goes, oh, by the way, it doesn't really matter what the teams do for their internal punishment. We're still going to look into everything anyway. So I don't know if this is going to be effective if there's something else here, but clearly they are just trying to avoid perhaps something bigger because we don't know all the details.
Right, so maybe we'll be talking about this for future episodes of Around the Payload. But Death, what do you think now about this whole situation?
I mean, obviously that's not something you can go out there doing. I don't know if there's a player out there that was willing to like buy this scenario where he can just guarantee spots from this far out or anything like that. So it's weird to me. Like, I don't understand what he was trying to do here, because I think he just probably looked foolish while trying to convince people that he could reserve them spots. And now he looks foolish getting punished for it. So I really don't understand it. I agree with what's been said. The number makes me think there's more to it. But as far as does the punishment fit the crime, I don't know, because we didn't get their salaries disclosed like every major sport. Like, we don't have that information. So, it's a very serious infraction. It's not something you can have your coaches going out there and doing. Whether or not the punishment fits the crime depends on his means. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know how much money this guy has, but you want him to feel it, right? So if he's got a good amount of money and he's making a good amount of money, you've got to find him a good amount of money. So I can't answer the question honestly without knowing his paid.
Right. Well,
I'm surprised.
They didn't say how underage. So what if these were like 3-year-old play? Okay, not going into that. Kicked
Can
last.
you lose points, Sheriff?
Nope,
Like,
I certainly cannot
Timmy's got
lose.
some mechanical skills. I think.
Kicked last word on the Shanghai Dragons conspiracy.
Listen, professionalism is the first thing that everybody is talking about when it comes to this league. When they brought into the Players Summit, they brought in Trevor May, a professional athlete, to talk to these players and coaches about what it means to now be in the spotlight and be a professional, and what it means to hold yourself to a higher standard. This should hurt. And honestly, I don't care if he's making $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year. At the end of the day, he's going to feel it, number one, because he's not making more than that. So at the very least, let's say it's 10% of his salary. That's a big thing. But at the, like, that's really serious allegations. And if you have teams that are taking advantage of a system like that and trying to poach young talent, that's going to affect the entire league in the long run. And if they are getting away with that, especially pre-season 1, like, you're going to have a big problem on your hands. So it's heavy-handed, but rightfully so.
Gotcha, for sure. Well, that actually leads us right into our next topic with heavy-handed, potentially, depending on your opinion on this. But we saw Mercy get nerfed again. More specifically, Valkyrie no longer makes Resurrect instant. It no longer grants a bonus charge of Resurrect. It also decreases the speed boost provided by Valkyrie via Guardian Angel by 50% and reduces its duration, the ultimate that is, from 20 seconds to 15 seconds. So, ZP, the question is Mercy dead and competitive? Will we be seeing her anymore?
Okay, Mercy for the last half year in Overwatch has sort of been that scene out of Highlander where he keeps getting stabbed and keeps coming back up. It's like, surely Mercy's dead this time. It's like, no. Or if you want to go the politics, the increasingly nervous man says this is the end for 7 times in a row. So that's kind of where Mercy has been in recent times. Is she dead from this? I think it's a little bit too soon to say. I think we could still see her in compositions like Pharah comps and whatnot, depending on the map. Is this going to hurt the ability to run her 24/7 without looking at the map or what people are running and still come out pretty effectively? There's a good chance of it. We'll have to see. I mean, I think the entire thing with happened to Valkyrie is that Valkyrie isn't doing everything at once right now, where you think where Valk was when it initially came out. You were flying for 20 seconds, incredibly hard to take out, 2 instant reses, and you have budget Transcendence, budget Orisa ult, all in one. Valkyrie is still a really strong ult now, but it's not doing everything at the same time. So but we'll see where this goes. My guess is that if Mercy's still played, she's relegated more to situational comps and being besties with Pharah.
Gotcha. Deathblow, I know you are a support player who hates to play Mercy. So, what are your thoughts on the Mercy?
My thoughts are, I sure hope so. I do not want to see her around. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to play it. I don't want anything to do with the Mercy meta anymore. I'm done with it. I don't know. I'm supposed to be like a shot caller, and then they try to put me into the playing Mercy, and like I'm staring at clouds. I can't shot call. I don't get to do anything. Like, this is the worst. I really think, in all likelihood, she's going to stay, like ZP said, Pharah's best friend. Like, that combo always works. It just gives the Pharah so much free reign to just take fire and not have to worry and just keep, raining damage down on everybody. But that's where it needs to be kind of stuck at. Like, it shouldn't be much more than that, I don't think. Especially, if the game is going to kind of lend itself to helping the league out. Like, all these teams have Lucio mains. How many of them have Mercy mains? Like, it's not a lot. So I really hope she's gone, and the sooner the better, because I think the quality of play that we see in OWL and in competitive as a whole will increase. So I hope so.
High hopes there. Kicked, what are your thoughts on Mercy?
I mean, at the end of the day, there were teams that were playing her 100% of the time, despite not even having a Mercy main. You saw the Florida Mayhem run Mercy 100% of the time in the preseason. There was not a moment where there wasn't Mercy being played. And when you've got that going, poor Zebasai, by the way, like, sorry, dude. But besides that fact, it wasn't a healthy thing. And it doesn't feel like a healthy game when that's happening. Mm-hmm. At the same time, any game that is created where there's an opportunity for you to have a 7-on-6, essentially an extra man advantage, there's going to be room for that in some way or another. And so I think at the end of the day, if they call it they call it a balance patch for a reason. And in this case, I think they've done a great job of balancing that. To Vic just said the other day, like, this feels like a really, really good change. I'm sure he's not saying that because there's no Mercy mains on his team.
In fairness, by the way, if the patch notes were Mercy has been removed from the game, I think Vic would have come out and said, "Yeah, this is a great change. This is fantastic." Like,
he's a smart guy.
At an extreme, though, sure, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of mechanics. Blizzard, especially in recent history, has been making games and mechanics that say, "Ooh, that's broken," and then finding a way to make it at least playable / balanced. I know if I say the word balanced, people are going to be like, "It's not balanced. This happens." But besides that, like, that happens in Hearthstone, that happens in World of Warcraft, and Overwatch is an even more phenomenal example. You've got stealth, you've got reses, and all this stuff in a competitive shooter. And so, hey, she's still okay. She's good. But she's not going to be run 100% of the time by teams that don't even have a Mercy main on their squad.
For sure. And I was going to say that mechanic you're talking about was Hearthstone. But Gil, last word on Mercy and the changes.
Well, there have been a lot of good points. So I do agree that Mercy needed to be nerfed. And it's not just because of balance necessarily, but also for the storylines coming into Overwatch League. You don't want it to be dominated by Mercy. And that being said, this also is not a very good balance if you're 100% just trying to make it balanced. But they're maybe over-adjusting a little bit here. I think that out of the 4 major changes, no longer making that res instant when using Valkyrie, that it no longer gives you that extra res, and the fact that your speed has been decreased and the duration has been decreased, you could pick maybe 3 of those and still have a little bit closer to a balanced hero. That said, I also
sounds like a Mercy main, by the way.
No, I hate Mercy. And this is the other thing. I love it because I hate to play with and against Mercies. Like, I play Anna. I would love to see Anna come back a little bit more. I barely even play any Mercy at all, even though I know it's super overpowered right now.
I can attest to this, by the way.
Or do I want to have fun?
I remember the show match, Gil, where Golden Boy dutifully went Mercy, and you did not.
No.
I remember. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
I don't want to get too distracted, but I have a lot of opinions on that match. That was the most important part of my life. So no, but anyway, going back to Mercy though, it's a little bit of an over-adjustment, but I think that it's good for now.
Mhm.
And what I think we're going to see is more creative changes coming out for Mercy in the future, because Resurrect is probably the most difficult mechanic to manage in general, but especially in a competitive shooter for reasons that have been mentioned previously, that 7-on-6 possibility. And so they're really spending time trying to figure out where that is best going to live. And I think this is a step in the right direction.
For sure. Definitely a lot of opinions here. No one mentioned the secret 5-point answer of Moira gets to get played, so those 5 points go to me. But
Does she?
It's not actually clear if she does.
It's not clear that she does.
Is Moira jumping from hero to hero, or
okay? So here's
she
what
just standing still.
Here's what matters, though, is that whether it's true or not is irrelevant. What is true is that you would have gotten 5 points for saying it.
I don't.
That's the game we're playing, quite literally.
Okay.
Gill.
What is
See, left guy knows. Left guy knows. Deathblow knows. Except he's losing points. Gill is giving himself points. But moving on, we heard LA Valiant confirmed that they're going to be moving to a local stadium to play in for season 3, alluding that season 2 will almost certainly also be played in the Burbank studio. So the question is, how does Overwatch League being in LA for the first 2 seasons affect Overwatch League's perception and performance, given that Blizzard is boasting it as the local and regionalized team? Deathblow, I want to get your thoughts first.
Well, I mean, on the overall, they're still going to be able to engage their fans in their cities to an extent, but in order for things to really hit the critical mass and take off, they're going to need to be playing in their home stadiums. But on the overall, you know, when we got the chance to interview Nate, and he was talking about, and I can't even remember which interview, but it was either us or ZP was there, so we can talk about it, right? You know, they said they're going to be like traveling based off stages and things like that, and I'm not sure they were going to hit numbers in Europe and Asia to make that really quite work for traveling by season 2 anyways. So maybe the league as a whole needs the time to really, you know, spread out and find all the cities that it wants to be present in. You know, it's going to hurt to an extent, but on the overall, like, they're still going to be able to grow a fan base. They're still going to be able to hype people up. It's like, I don't know, because there's not a team here, but I have a feeling if there was a Buffalo anything in this league, I wouldn't care and nothing else would matter. Yeah. You can play the games on Mars and I'm still going to root for that team.
Especially if they won, because Buffalo doesn't win much.
Hey, we were in the playoffs. Back off.
ZP, I'm sorry. It's too close, man. It's too close.
Minnesota, you can't talk to any other sports team about not winning, because we come from the state that is the king of doing that.
We're both pretty snake bitten as far as franchises go. The main difference is we miss our field goals wide right and you miss them wide left.
Gary Anderson. Damn.
Yeah, this is a single field goal all season long. Let's
2
just be clear.
seasons. All right. Sorry.
Everyone's losing points if we keep talking about football.
More football talk. But yeah, so I don't know. I think on the overall, it's going to be fine. It hurts them a little bit, but honestly, more the teams themselves, I think, than the league as a whole. The league needs to spread out and get everybody to be aware about it and try to bring them in. And it can do that with playing their games in LA. That's fine. But as far as building those local, really invested fan bases, it's going to hurt a little bit.
Gotcha. Kicked, is season 3 too late for the localization of the league?
Listen, that LED wall is not going to pay for itself. You've got to get some mileage out of that baby. But besides the fact, I think that right now, the name of the game is establishing the league, not establishing your local fan base in the sense of having people going to a stadium every week. Right now, you're worried about people watching the game. There's even in Denver, there's like viewing parties and stuff for Overwatch League. People are overly hyped about it. And it's even more so in cities like Dallas and Houston and San Francisco and New York. On top of that, World League doesn't work with 12 teams and only 1 in Europe. Like, I like traveling as much as the next guy, but unless I'm flying, you know, United Arab Emirates first class, I do not want to be traveling 1 week to London and then the next week to San Francisco and then the next week to Shanghai. Like, that's just not feasible. And until you get the number of teams involved that need to be there, that you just it's just completely not feasible. And as an investor and as somebody who or I'm not an investor, but if I were an investor or if I were a company looking to get involved in Overwatch League, I want to invest in a company, in a product that has self-awareness about where they're succeeding and where they need to grow to, rather than the fact of like, imagine if we're going worldwide this season, right? And they're like, yeah, this is the biggest thing. Look at $240 million, Robert Kraft, all this stuff. And then they're like, nobody's, nothing's ready, right? Nothing's ready. You got to have that time there. And I think that shows incredible restraint, self-awareness, and again, that vision for the long term that esports needs right now in order to succeed, and not just say, hey, we're doing city-based leagues starting tomorrow, and letting that headline be enough to let the league trudge through what would be a failure. That's
true. I mean, there's no way that it would work tomorrow, but Gill, in your opinion, is season 3 going to be too late, or is it the perfect time?
I don't think season 3 is going to be too late. I was fully expecting, and I would have been really just fine with 2019 shooting for that. And it actually could be the case. It could be that teams start to grow into those as their local communities and ecosystems dictate. Who knows? I mean, I think that it's going to be managed as well as it can be moving forward. So I don't think so. Now, that said, the question being, how will this affect its perception? It will definitely have a negative impact, at least on a certain segment of society that I'd like to call angsty millennials. Basically, these are your classic diamond tier players.
Hey, guys.
Hot stuff, and they you just want to have something to talk about and something to run their mouth at. And here's the thing, though, is this is what millennials have been getting fed their entire life. They've been fed that they are special and that they can just go for the stars, and they've been promised a lot of big things, and Blizzard has promised a lot of big things, but you got to realize that stuff has to happen first. You can't just expect that to be handed to you on a silver platter whenever you want it. You actually have to see that some work goes into that. And so that is what Blizzard is investing in. They are investing time and energy into a long-term venture. So the fact that it's not everything that everyone hoped and dreamed it would be immediately, the groundwork has been laid. And I will be patiently waiting for these different steps in esports and in Overwatch esports to grow.
I like the persona of grumpy old man left guy shaking his stick, telling the millennials to get off of his lawn. But
you called my mom a liar. I am a special snowflake.
ZP, last word on this.
Okay, so I think the key point here is that it takes time to build up numbers to support things on the scale on all levels, everything from the production. Gill, of course, is well acquainted with the idea that production is hard. You have to have people involved that know what they're doing, and they have to have a high level of expertise, and you want to do it to OWL level quality. So if you're running a home game somewhere, you think about everything that went into building the Blizzard Arena. You now need to replicate that level of staff and expertise for every home arena to an extent. That's going to take time to hire and build out for all these different teams and all the rest. Then you have the issue of casting talent, where right now you have 3 pairs for Overwatch League. You're going to need a lot more if you want to do home and away games going forward. And again, this is a case where, hey, if you're interested in casting, now's the time to get in, because you're going to need more people there. And then you have the issue of fans as well, where it's not going to be instantly that everyone is aware that Overwatch League is there. To get people to a point where they want to go to games regularly and become real diehard homers, they have to be exposed to the sport, the team, etc. for quite a while. So you want to have a situation where you go to your 7,000 seat stadium in LA and you're filling it up reasonably regularly. You don't want to open season 1 with that, where you're still building that initial fan base and then have a ghost town. So the idea that this is going to potentially start in season 3 rather than season 2 makes quite a bit of sense for me if you just take a moment to think about the economies of scale as they move up.
Yeah. I mean, you asked me to think about something, and that's why the steam is coming out of my ears. But let's move right along to round 2. But before we do, let's go over and recap the scores. In dead last place, of course, we have Deathblow at a measly 14 points. Sorry, I misspoke, 13 points. In third place, we've got KickedTripod with 26 points, double that of Deathblow. And narrowly ahead, we've got ZP with 27, and we've got Gill76, or Grumpy Left Guy, up at the top with his Pachimari plush at 29 points. So it is almost anyone's game going into the next round.
Is it really Deathblow's game? I feel like the show is sort of against.
I got you guys right where I want you.
I said almost anyone's game. It's
right,
almost anyone's game.
I'm coming for you, ZP. 27 points.
Well, you're going to need to do a lot of stuff in round 2, but let's start it up. Okay, I don't know if these sound effects are working, so I'm just going to talk over them as though they're not. So this was a question that I originally cut because I didn't think it was a very good question. I put it in super early, but everyone loved it so much. So, KickedTripod, we will start with you. Will Widowmaker players be the superstars of their teams? Are we going to see the Widowmaker players for the New York Excelsior and the Seoul Dynasty be the LeBron James and Michael Jordans of their teams?
So the short answer is obviously yes, but I also think that that answer shows an understanding of a game that still lacks overall maturity. I like to use something like, you start in, let's use football. You start straying away from the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and you start highlighting those tight ends, those running backs, those fullbacks. And in this case as well, I think that Widowmaker it's a great perspective. There's a reverence for the amount of skill that it takes to land those headshots. And man, they're fun. Dia's clip is the most clipped or most shared clip from the Overwatch preseason against the Seoul Dynasty on point 2 on Temple of Anubis. And I better get points for just remembering that. But, there's people love seeing that point of view. The other point of view people love seeing is FARA, right? It provides a unique perspective. It's basically third person. It allows the spectators to cheat third person without doing third person. So that's always great. You get a little bit wider map view there. But in my humble, stupid, not ZP opinion, I really believe that the MVPs or the superstars should be the tanks. And I want to share one piece of information as to why I believe that way. If you look at the number of team kills initiated by the tanks, the highest teams with team kills initiated by a tank is the Valiant, Excelsior, Outlaws, Spitfire, and Dynasty. They have the highest percentage of team kills for tanks. And that correlates really strongly to what we kind of expect to see as the best teams in Overwatch League. It's really fun to see Dia, hit that first kill or whatever. But even then, when Shanghai hit the first kill, they still only won 60% of those team fights, which is awful when you compare to everything else. And those are on maps where Widowmaker was being played and Dia hit that first team kill. So don't get me wrong, I love seeing the Widowmaker point of view. And I think it's really fun and it's really cool to be like, wow, look at that. That was so neat. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about superstars, I want to put Gronkowski on my wall, not Tom Brady. And in this situation, I want to honestly put players like Miro and even I'm going to say it, Coco. I want to put like those type of players who are just staples for those teams as MVPs and quit looking for the slam dunks, because at the end of the day, slam dunks 2 points, a layup that draws a foul is 3 points.
Could be 3 points, but I have one question for you, Kicked. What you know about LeBron James? But I want to hear.
He's an excellent golfer.
Old man Gillfrost. I want to know what does the old timer think? What is the old school mantra for Overwatch MVPs?
These damn kids there watching their Widowmaker and no. Okay, so yeah, Gronk. Gronk is a really I mean, he probably is actually doing a lot in that relationship, maybe even more so than the quarterback. But guess who's getting probably paid more and is going to get more airtime and is going to be the superstar? It's going to be that quarterback. And so Widowmaker is indeed going to be the superstar for a lot of these teams. It is going to be a hotly contested matchup, I think, in a lot of these maps. And it's partially just because of the inherent, things that are fun to watch about Widow, the mechanical skill, the high impact of each one of her shots that could make or break fights. And even if she's missing, it's actually fun to watch because you're like, why are you still on Widow? But realistically, I think it's time to talk about balance. When we talk about Mercy being imbalanced in the very difficult mechanic to manage that is the resurrection, well, actually in class-based shooters, especially sniper rifles, and any shooter really, sniper rifles are very hard to balance as well because it gives you a very wide range of reward for mechanical skill advantage. So right now, arguably, Widow's in a really good spot with some not so recent changes, but she is arguably slightly overpowered, and that is one of the reasons why she is going to be someone the observers are picking a lot.
Why is 23% overpowered? 23% pick rate with little to no impact on overall team kill win rate.
I think because you're ignoring how Widow changes positioning in the game, where a Widowmaker suddenly, like, you look at Temple Anubis first, right? You have Widowmaker on top. What does that do to the team that's on point? Suddenly, everyone's hiding off to the right because, holy shit, Widowmaker is forcing those positioning changes, and then you're still not guaranteed to be safe from getting picked off, depending on how the fight goes out. So you can't always judge that based on just a kill stat in terms of how Widow affects the game.
But we saw Seoul Dynasty set up their defense on the right to begin with.
Yeah, and some teams it's going to be better for.
Well, they'll set it up on the right on Anubis because Widow coming out on first point Anubis is the expected play. It is incredibly common to see first point Widow Anubis. You don't want to sit your defense on the main point and go, oh, they're not going to run a Widow. Oh, we lost someone. I guess they're running a Widow. You assume the Widow until they prove otherwise.
Well, regardless of the actual impact, what the question is, I mean, LeBron James could have a terrible season. People are still going to look at him to be an MVP because he's so powerful. So, ZP, do you think that the Widowmaker is the MVP player here, or is it something else?
Okay, so I have beaten the war drum of Widowmaker going back basically to the beginning of the game. Anyone who's followed the old cast, I've essentially been a Stark. I've been warning about winter is coming for ages, and now it's starting to look like after she was used in the beginning, but now after a time where she wasn't used as much, the wall has fallen, the White Walkers are moving in. And why is that?
Spoilers.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. This gets completely ruined if you're not caught up, but you should be caught up. That's your own fault.
Yeah, 2
Here's
points
the thing
for
about
that.
Widow. Pure FPS mechanics, a 300 damage headshot cannon, where realistically speaking, you look at times where people bring out Widowmaker. Yes, landing the shots is difficult, but there's always the opportunities. So there's always that skill cap there from a mechanical end. Teams don't always practice Widow as much as they should in situations where she's not as common because she is so hit or miss, right? It's you're getting a pick off and everything's going well, or you fail and your team just goes, why are we running Widow? But heroes like Widow that have that avenue of mechanical skill can completely take over the game. Look no further than FOWL in Overwatch World Cup, where Team USA, they were playing strategically well against this Widow in terms of trying to dive in and neutralize it as much as possible, utilize line of sight. Didn't really matter in the end. He plowed them like they were a third-rate farm, especially if you look at a map like Gibraltar. FOWL just dominated. And you want to talk about the point Gill brought up with the idea that the observers focus on it. Yeah, you have to focus on it because that is the key point. It's not a thing that goes over time where you have a time to, adjust and go, oh, this guy's getting chased down. It's I have to be looking at the Widowmaker as an observer, or I don't catch the moment of the kill, and we're sending that to replay. So yes, overall, Widowmaker, if played well and is able to take over a game, it is going to be seen as a star player. And also, just as an aside to a point made earlier, as a caster, I only sometimes like seeing Pharah. One of the worst things to do is watch a Pharah when you see two Pharahs up in the air just missing each other, and you just go, oh God, please, put the camera on anyone else. And this happens even with the best Pharahs in the game. Watching blimp combat where no blimps actually get hit is bad. please put it on the ground war when that happens.
Might as well be watching me playing Pharah, you know?
Yeah, same here. But definitely got some points for mentioning Flower there, ZP. But you didn't mention Kefri in the same sentence, which means you don't need to lose all of your points. But Deathblow, last word on Widowmaker being an MVP caliber character.
Yeah, I mean, I think she has to be, right? It's almost inevitable that the person that wins is going to spend some time on her. There's two things that are really going to help the Widowmaker players more than anything else. They've been brought up and mentioned already, but camera time is going to be a huge factor. Like, it's not going to be a fan vote, but to a certain extent, like the amount of like jerseys sold and things like that, like are going to weigh into the decision-making process a little bit here. So fan support is going to be big for deciding who it is to an extent. But the other factor is just, I mean, making an impact on the kill feed itself. Like, you've got to be the one to get the kills so that everybody can see, you know, this person died from our Widowmaker or from Linkser. And I bring him up specifically because he's the best one, and he's going to be the MVP of the league. So might as well just throw that out there. The rules are really changing with you. I don't know. We need week 2 for this show. At least I need week 2 for this show. But I do just want to take a second to thank Gillfrost for not being willing to utter the name of the quarterback for the New England Patriots. He just wouldn't do it. Like, he got there and he couldn't spit it out, and I really appreciate it. And
dark season for Broncos fans, so I'm really trying to push out as much as I can.
I don't think it takes too much to make people hate New England, but I just
Broncos fans don't like mentioning any good quarterback when they look at the idea that they got stuck with Brock Osweiler again. Come on.
I'm going to reset everyone's points back to 0 if we keep talking about football.
Just start watching football. Start watching football.
Absolutely not. But because there's too much Overwatch League to watch, and from the viewers of High Noon Podcast know this as this is probably the most important match of the entire season for us as the host. But New York Excelsior versus Houston Outlaws is the most contested, quote-unquote, playoff caliber level teams playing against each other in the first week, at least according to the High Noon Pick'em. It's at about 60%, I believe, in favor of New York at this point, but it was basically 50-50, dead even for the entirety. So, Left Guy, I want to get your thoughts. Who do you have in this matchup and why?
Well, this one's a difficult one. I have these teams right next to each other in the standings in my own head anyway, the power rankings. But I've got to, and I just want to say that I feel this internal pressure to go with Excelsior, and I'm just thinking that maybe this podcast is not a safe place when it comes to fandom. But I got to stick with my gut on this one, and because it stick to my own morals and ethics, and that is go with my gut, and that is Houston Outlaws going to be coming out on top. I think that when you look at the teams against each other. Flower being too young still too young to play, right? Yep. For another couple of months.
Correct.
And then you look at the tank matchups. Muma and Kulmat are going to outperform New York Excelsior's tank line, and I don't think that. I think that's going to be the difference maker in this first matchup. If they make later in the season, could definitely be different.
For sure. And as much as I want to detract points from you, I'm just going to take more away from Deathblow when he talks. So don't worry about it. CP, I want to know, who are you picking in New York versus Houston and why?
Okay, so New York versus Houston, I think the interesting way of evaluating this for me is you go back and look at the preseason, strength of schedule and otherwise, and even though Houston lost both of their matches in the preseason, you couldn't have had a tougher lineup with what they're going against. Even though I would arguably say that I think Dallas was definitely treating it more like exhibition with how often they were swapping, and so is Houston to an extent. But I think it's easy to underrate Houston from the preseason when, in fact, they were playing pretty well. And what I would point to, if there's anything that could power up a Houston victory here, is the idea that Linkser and particularly Jake have been putting on absolutely stellar performances in live environments way beyond what they were doing in the online sphere in recent times. It started with Contenders Finals for Linkser. Jake played far better than he did in his LG Evil days in World Cup and has been impressing in the preseason. So honestly, for Houston here, I see scenarios where they can be a dark horse and move in and take this over New York. Obviously, I think the smart money is still on New York, given the fact their performance in the preseason and the overall strength of the lineup. But for me, part gut feel, part a little bit sentimental because I do enjoy hanging out with a lot of the players on the Outlaws team. But I feel like Outlaws can actually take this.
Interesting, man. I didn't think I was going to have to kick everyone off of the show. Weird.
Yeah, you must just be crying right now. Like, how many tears are in your beard?
Nope, no tears. Deathblow is also on the show, but let's go to Kicknuck. Death, I already know who you're picking, but let's hear a little bit of a breakdown for it.
Houston won't just win this matchup. Houston is going to steamroll the New York Excelsior 4-0 in the second match for each of these teams. No, in all honesty, it's going to be really, really close. We've talked about this, and as much as I like to root for Houston, these teams are really closely matched. I had them kind of as like 4A and 4B in my power rankings for a reason. Like, the only reason I actually flipped them was because I wanted to show that Houston got closer to the top 4 after the preseason than farther away from it, and they already had them at 5. So I kind of like had to move them up. This is going to mean a lot, I think. Like, these are two teams that are going to be fighting for playoff spots, I think. You know, I don't know that either of them is really kind of on the same level at the moment as Seoul, but I do think they're kind of both right there in that top 4. They can both hang with anyone. The one thing that I will say I think gives Houston the slight advantage here is the fact that, you know, we've talked about it a lot, will moving to the United States affect these Korean rosters, and will it be a culture shock? There's a reason why Envy was the first team to go over to Korea and win an esports title in Korea. And it's because it's hard to travel and it's hard to play in a new and spend a lot of time in a new culture and a new environment. So that impact will be stronger now than it will be at any point during the season. So I'm going to say that breaks the tie. And if I'm guessing honestly, I'd even say 3-2. Like, I think this is going to be really close. Jonak will be back. There's a lot of things going for both teams. I can't wait to see how New York uses Libero. There's a lot to like about both sides. And when season 2 gets here, or not season 2, but week 2 gets here, I'll be actively rooting for New York. But for the time being, go Greenwall. It's all Houston. I even drew. I don't ever draw. I even drew their logo. I'm such a big fan. So I'm obviously got to pick them. And shout outs to ZP for having a literal green wall behind him. I mean, I have to hold up a fake one, but like, that's a real green wall he's got there. I'm impressed.
It is a green wall.
It's not a green wall. It's a turquoise sidewalk. Deathblow.
Well, Kicked, I know there's got to be some ounce of you that's gonna bring this home. I really gotta. I need to know who are you picking and why in this one.
So I think that I have an irreverence for ZP and Gillfrost, but I think that they have missed one important factor in this matchup, and that is going to be Tracer. And at the end of the day, I think Sabiobi is a better Tracer than any single Tracer that Houston can put out. And I think that on any day, let's just say that tanks and supports break even. Let's say, because I would say on any day, it can go back and forth between their tank lines and support lines between these two. But Sabiobi is a better Tracer than Linkser, Jake, or Clockwork. He is. And when you are relying so much, number one, Tracer is going to be basically a 100% pick. He's going to be on the field all of the time. Sabiobi wins those duels, is able to pick off those supports, and is able to harass in a way that the Houston Outlaws aren't able to counter against, even with great tanks like Cool Matt and Muma. I think at the end of the day, that gives them the edge. I think this is going to be a close one. I'm very emotional about this matchup because I think it is such a good one. And later on, I think we're talking about the headline match of the week. For me, this is the headline match of the week. And the reason why that is because at the end of the day, this is going to establish how close in skill the third, fourth place team is to the fifth, sixth place team is. And I think that's really important. We don't want to see a league with a very wide delta between the best and worst teams. We want to see a league where it squishes, it's tight. There's always teams that you can cheer for. And while I like to think that it won't all be that, I mean, Seoul is so good, the end of the day, I think that Sabiolbi, Libero, those two are going to be the difference makers in this. NYXL comes out with the victory here. And again, I think that in honestly 3 or 4 months, we might have something different to say. It might be a lot closer. But until then, I don't think the Houston Outlaws can deal with Sabiolbi in a way that they need to that allows them to get the win.
I do have one counterpoint, and it's short. Linkser on McCree if Tracer is really getting disproportionate value.
Yeah.
So then, but then can they not run like McCree? Can you also deal with the other team and then also protect your supports? I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, we've seen Linkser do that.
You absolutely can.
Well,
but we haven't. We saw Linkser on McCree and he was okay.
I would point to his historic potential there, and particularly when things matter and you're out of the exhibition arena to all that. Just think back to Contenders Season 1 finals where you go to Nepal at the very end, and what do you see? You see suddenly Tavik come out and go, I'm going to play fair, and Linkser just goes, I'm just going to go McCree and kill you, and also the rest of your team. So Linkser does have that potential to just completely shut down DPS threats. And if there's a situation where they're just getting completely bodied by Tracer, I could see the McCree coming out for that.
But you're still losing a DPS to do that.
You're not losing a DPS because you're still containing the Tracer, and you can still apply pressure to McCree. It's not like McCree is only containing the Tracer. And also, you're also affecting how the Tracer can play in that case as well, where Sabiolbi, how aggressive he can be is depending on what the other team is also playing.
But the Tracer is also affecting how the McCree is playing.
Sure.
Right. So like, I think that goes both ways.
But if the argument is that Sabiolbi is going to take over the game, there's definitely things that Houston can do, in particular with like Linkser swapping to the McCree, to make that much more of a pain for Sabiolbi.
Well,
I don't think Sabiolbi is taking over the game, but I think at the end of the day, if you get Houston Outlaws to not be able to play a Tracer, you're already ahead of the game. You're already ahead, and you're poised to do well. But again,
we got to move on.
But yeah, what it's going to what it's going to boil down to is who came first, the Houston or the NYXL. And it's definitely going to be NY. I mean, that sentence made no sense, but I don't care. We need to move on. We're quickly running down on time, and we need to move into round 3. Before we do, we've still got Deathblow in dead last place, 29 points. We've got Gillfrost with 49. We've got KickedTripod with 52, and ZP overtaking the lead up with 57. So still almost anyone's game going into the last round, and that, of course,
game's still rigged.
Yeah, it 100% is. I'm the one rigging it. I'm doing it right now.
No shame. Absolutely no shame.
It's no shame November all year round. So let's move on to the buy or sell round. So we will start with Deathblow. Buy or sell. Are you buying or selling that we're going to see the GC Busan roster play in week 1 for the London Spitfire?
I'm going to sell it. Last I checked, they were still grounded. These guys, we're not even sure they're okay. They're still banned from their social media. No, I mean, they were upset by the performance that was put out from that roster, and I personally don't expect to see them as almost a continuation of the punishment. The team needs to get off to a hot start. They went from being kind of like the presumptive number 1, right? Because it was really possible they might have 2 of the best rosters on their team, let alone, being one of the best teams themselves. And so I don't know. I think they really want to get off to a hot start here. I can't remember off the top of my head who they're playing this week. But either way, I think they want to make a statement here. Like week 1 is statement week. You can define who you are here. And if you crush people, then you're going to be thought of as a really good team. And that's exactly what they want here. They've slipped a little bit in people's expectations and on power rankings. And I'm sure they'll say they don't look at those things, but everybody looks at those things. And so they're aware of it, and they want to recover from that. They want that top spot back. They want to be thought of in the same breath as Seoul. And right now they're just not quite there. So I don't expect to see any Busan.
Kicked, are you buying or selling GC Busan in week 1 for London?
Buy. I mean, not the whole core, but I'm absolutely buying this here. You're definitely going to see profit almost all the time. You're definitely going to see a good amount of gesture. But he didn't play as well on Orisa and Reinhardt. But besides that, I think you have Fissure there, and then you're going to put Gesture in there. I think you see Hagopian quite a bit, and you also see Closer. I don't think you can overlook the current synergies that the GC, Busan, and Kongdu roster have either in the short term. So short term, I would look to capitalize on those synergies in early games against those tough opponents. But also, like they say, they play the Mayhem week 1. We might see them put out their best 6, right? If they put out their best 6, which I think Rascal, Fissure are definitely in there. Sure, we might not see them week 1, but I think at the end of the day, especially against the tough matchups and in the first 3 or 4 weeks, I think that you're going to be really, you're going to be, if I was on the London Spitfire and I was a coach, I'd be looking to capitalize those synergies against those close matchups. And I would be looking to create new powerful ones against the teams we're going to steamroll like the Mayhem.
For sure. Left guy, are you buying or selling Busan week 1?
Yeah, it's a hard one because I think we might see one player, but I'm going to go ahead and sell. I don't think we're going to really see them much in week 1, especially. And I think it has less to do with the talent on the roster and more to do with the phenomena of subs with the current size of a lot of these rosters. And I think that, a lot of people might have been fooled by the preseason, the fact that we saw all these subs and all the players are coming in and playing. They had to do that. That was part of the requirements for the preseason, was that all the players had to get play time. And so I don't think that teams in week 1 are going to be doing that. We are going to see the depth of roster become much more impactful as the esport continues to evolve and as teams continue to evolve with how they can use it. But week 1, we're still going to see a largely a 6-man a single roster dominate for a lot of these teams. And that's why we're not going to really see much of or any of GC Busan to this one. If we do, though, I will say Profit would be the first one.
For sure. ZP, last words, buy or sell on Busan in week 1?
So absolutely buy. There were points made about, you need to come out to a strong start. I disagree. I think if you have a time where you're going to be experimenting with your roster where, look, you've put 2 rosters together, spur of the moment, you're getting them adapted to America. If you're going to have a time that you're going to try out different combinations and permutations, you're going to do it at a point where your season isn't on the line and you don't have to worry about playoff implications. You're going to mess around with that early rather than later, because you don't want to be in a situation where you don't fully know what's working by the time you get to week 3 and suddenly you feel like you have to go into win now mode. Now, bear in mind, I'm only buying here because Jack himself didn't have the option of buying out Soul Dynasty after watching the results of the preseason. So obviously there's a limit there. They're stuck with the 12 they have. But I just think it's smart sense here to mix things up in the beginning and then as the season goes on, really solidify who you're going to run when, because you've used data from early in the season. I think rosters that go out of their way to run their absolute best hand in the very beginning from week 1 forward, unless it's Florida Mayhem where they actually have players, they can't actually change. But
yeah, you're right. We do see a lot of second stream quarterbacks in that first game of the FOWL season.
It's different
You're
though.
playing the Browns, you do. Yeah, you do.
and also
Points
to that
for
point, Gil,
everyone.
it's more to the NFL example. You don't run the offensive players on defense. You don't run the defensive players on offense. Overwatch is a game where you rapidly swap up depending on the situation, and you have teams that are stacked with talent with players that have varying different specialities. So this is a case where you want to swap things up earlier rather than later, figure out your plan going forward, and then, hopefully have your stuff figured out by the time you get into matchups that you absolutely must win.
For sure. Speaking of absolutely must wins, we talked about the Shanghai Dragons and their controversy earlier, but they have other fish to fry and other problems to worry about. So we'll start with you, KickedTripod. Are you buying or selling the Shanghai Dragons finishing over 500 in Overwatch League?
I mean, this is the easiest sell in the world for me. They play Seoul, Houston, the New York Excelsior, London, and FOWL. Boom. There's 5 losses right there. Easy. Like you just have to look at those 2 teams and go, oh, darn, even if they take like the closest one in that, right, is like, let's say Houston or NYXL, depending on which color your wall is. And let's say you do that, they still have to play their best the other 6 weeks or 5 weeks. And that's just not going to happen. They're not a team that's consistent enough. I thought Dia looked really great. He was really, really fun to watch because Widowmaker's the superstar all of a sudden. But besides that fact, like, they're just not a team that's ready to compete right now.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the teams that they're having to play against, they're not a team that's prepared to beat these teams, especially for as early into the season as they're going to see them. So don't get me wrong. I really like the philosophy of some of these teams, like the Boston Uprising and the Shanghai. I love the idea of Moneyball. ZP and I are from Minnesota. We're used to watching the Minnesota Twins. We're used to watching $55 million clubs going up against $200 million clubs and watching them compete. And that's really fun. And you want to root those guys on. But at the end of the day, when you're playing 4 different Yankees, like, at the end of the day, you're not coming out of that 500. So no, sell.
Gotcha. Gil, I want to hear your thoughts on this one. Are you buying or selling Shanghai ending up over 500?
I am also selling on this one for a lot of the reasons that were just mentioned, but also just from the experience that I've had with watching Chinese teams in even other esports and knowing some of the cultural aspects, the utter chaos that can be used to describe the Chinese esports scene, means that since they're not there right now, they're trying to merge together players from multiple rosters,
Mm-hmm.
and they're with the drama that is going to be holding them back. I think that eventually they'll pull together a cohesive roster, but it's not going to be in time to be over 500 this season. They have a ton of players to pull from. I mean, turns out there's a lot of people in China. I know, right? And so and a lot of no one's really tapping that market at all. So they have a very high ceiling for potential. The problem is that the infrastructure is not there in the same way that it is in places like Korea, or even in how North American and European teams and players are interacting with each other from a synergy and infrastructure.
Gotcha. I mean, I think a lot of the, quote unquote best players in China right now are underage, so they couldn't even play this season if they wanted to. But ZP, what are you buying or selling this? Is anyone gonna take this this awesome Shanghai that I've got to sell you?
Okay, so I will take on the challenge here, and the reason is that it's not about the first month of the season. We're talking about a season that goes for half a year. If you're talking about Shanghai for only the first month, then yeah, they're doomed. They're like absolutely doomed for the first month. I think something that's worth noting here, though, is that it's a half of year season. You're talking about a team that has access to the entire Chinese region, and a team that, of all the teams in the league, is one of the top candidates to have a big reversal when you get into the idea of mid-season signings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, will they actually figure things out with regards to their coaching staff, like all the drama that's been going on? It's hard to say. I would actually say, if I had to be pushed, it'd be more the idea that it'd be incredibly close. But I think Shanghai is a case where there's more of a potential for a comeback story that people are giving credit for. A lot of people saw them as a wild card going in because, frankly, knowledge about the Chinese scene is less comprehensive than it is about any other scene in Overwatch. But personally, I think that dismissing the idea that they could come back outright might be a bit folly. And again, it just comes down to the idea that mid-season signings are a really big wild card.
True.
Real quick, on the back of that, I just want to make a real quick prediction or a statement. I think that they are the team most likely to not get over 500 and still win everything in the playoffs for that exact reason. Like, I just don't think they're going to pull it back in time, but they could go just under 500 and then streak at the very end and win it all. That's the potential.
For sure. And ZP, I just wanted to clarify something. When you say that they have access to the full Chinese scene. Are you promising spots on the Shanghai Dragons to underage players? Because it looks like you're going to need to be
You have now made a tremendous leap. I expected to have Deathblow, not you.
I just want to make a point here that no Korean players are monsters either. So, you know, like we could definitely see miraculous youngster players showing up on NA teams.
Well,
for sure.
I was going to say, if you guys don't mind, I would like a turn. And I'm really excited suddenly.
30 points behind.
I know, but he
Like,
said at the
come on.
beginning we weren't eliminating people. You have to listen to me. It's in the rules. We don't have many rules. That's one of
true.
them.
And you gave 3 points for pointing out innocuous rules.
Yes.
Technically correct is the best kind of correct.
And I'm super excited. I was terrified to go last on this one because if nobody is willing to buy them, how can you possibly sell them? You need a buyer to sell. So now, thank you, ZP. I finally get to sell this garbage team. I don't want anything to do with them. I've got them number 12. You guys talk about Florida like they're the Browns.
Florida exists, by the way. Just see.
I understand, but like I think their 6 is better than if, like, I mean, you could almost give these Shanghai players one extra guy on the field, and I still think Florida's going to give them a game, to be perfectly honest with you. I understand. It's like, listen, if Florida had a bench and had people that they could play with, and I don't know how this suddenly became about Florida, but I'm going to run with it because otherwise I have to talk about Shanghai. But if Florida had a bench, we wouldn't be talking about them like a bottom half team. We would be talking about them like potentially a playoff team right up there, probably in that LA Valiant 6 spot that I see so many people give them. They would have some issues, but they'd have some variety. Like it keeps them from being near the top half of the league. It doesn't make Florida the worst team in the league, I don't think, until we see that. Like they get to address it, they get to fix it. Shanghai is going to finish last in my mind. They're the team. I mean, they lost to Boston. Guys, they lost to Boston.
Boston's a good team. They're fine.
Oh, man.
Well, let's not
My
get
mind just
crazy
exploded.
here.
These are a short segment. Boston's a good team. We can go. I'm done here. I
right.
can't,
Well,
I can't follow
They're a
that.
top bottom half team.
Okay, well, luckily we are going to get
What
the chance
word
to...
trickery is that?
We're... You know what,
They're
They're
Kick?
one of the best
You know what,
awful teams out here.
They're
These-
finishing
You're getting 3.
7th.
You're getting
I'm
2
calling
points
it
for
right
that.
now.
You're getting 2
7th?
points for the wordplay, and I almost want to take the points away for saying 7th. But let's move along because we can talk about this. You know, Kicked, you must be one of these people because the fans on High Noon Pick'em are actually picking Boston to beat Florida Mayhem. So, I'll get to you, but Left Guy, I want first word on this. Are you buying or selling the Boston Uprising beating the Florida Mayhem here?
I'm buying it. I definitely am expecting them to, at the very least, contend. But I actually was impressed with some of their play. And the one thing that I really took away from the preseason was some of the ceilings and just seeing how some of these players can play and how well they can play. Now, I think that Boston, with the team that they have put together, definitely are going to peak a little bit later. They need to let some things kick in with the players that they've got put together. But I think that when we're talking about even the first game, I think the Florida Mayhem are drastically overestimated. Overestimated? Underestimated? Their underestimation in the community is...
Thanks, George.
Yeah, I got you. People are expecting a lot of big things from them, but all I see is a team that has not been able to adapt to the changing tides in Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them going up against a team that still needs to find some cohesion, but that Boston is going to win out in the end. Buying.
Interesting. ZP, I want to hear, are you also buying the Boston Uprising over the Florida Mayhem here?
Yes. Unequivocally, you have to right now. Florida has not given anyone a reason to think that they're going to pull out of their tailspin right now. And even though I think Boston is definitely a flawed team with holes at the moment, they have enough bright spots, particularly what we saw coming out from players like Stryker. Also, just the idea that they did appear more well-coached than people had expected versus Florida, which has been... Honestly, it's been the same story with this Misfits core for a long time where, unfortunately, whether it be an alt economy or just, the way they approach team fights, there's always something it feels like that goes wrong. And they've only really been able to win games in recent memory when you have Logix just being a madman, but you haven't seen that as much in live play. They've have just been cursed in live play. So until Florida actually proves that they can get over the hump, it's difficult to pick them over anyone aside from, maybe Philly. I don't know. We'll see how Philly does.
Well, Deathblow, I'm a little dumbstruck here. I want to hear what you have to say. What is it? Who are you picking here? Buy or sell?
It's craziness is what it is. It's lunacy. I am definitely selling Boston picking this. I mean, listen, we're talking in my mind about number 10 versus number 11. So I'm not going to fall out of my chair here if Boston happens to win. But when I watched in the preseason and I saw Boston have to scrape and claw to beat the Shanghai Dragons, who I view as the worst team in the league, that match, despite being close and competitive, did not feel like the other matches. Tell me you got a similar feeling to when you were watching Dallas versus Houston in that matchup. Tell me it felt like the same level of play. I thought when I watched that match, looking at it and staring at my computer's monitor, I'm like, this is 11 versus 12 right now, and whoever wins is getting 11, and whoever loses is getting 12, and they made it as close as possible. It felt like a lower quality of Overwatch. And listen, Boston did. When their roster came out, I was like laughing. And I think a lot of people were just laughing. It didn't make sense. And now we see a little bit of that. I don't think Boston's irreparably bad anymore. I think they have a chance, but early is not the time when I'm taking them. I'm not going to pick them to beat a team that's been together for X months. I don't care if they're in a slump. They're a team that's been together, not like called up from obscure places where people never even got to see them before. And some of those players are doing really well right now, like especially Note. Like I didn't have much of a book on Note, and he played really, really well in the preseason, but I'm not picking them. I don't see how they stand up to and fight with Tavik. And if Logix gets it back even a little bit, I think this matchup might not even be particularly close in week 1.
Yeah, I mean, is Logix going to reverse his curse kicked? Are you buying? Are you buying it? Are you buying the Boston Uprising? You gotta say that sentence to yourself. Are you buying the Boston Uprising here?
In week 1, no. I'm just not. I think people are putting too much stock in preseason results rather than the long-term results of different teams. I mean, we're talking about misfits here. It's not a team that has sucked for 2 years by any means.
But they have sucked in recent memory for a while. You're talking about a team that basically had the bottom fall out in season 0. And then they really, realistically speaking, coming back, they did need the infusion of Logix to suddenly bring them back. But they've been a team that's been hurting for a while, that they had an infusion that saved them. But I don't know. I kind of would disagree. I think in the long term, Misfits has really had troubles in the last half a year.
Compared to a team with no results, a short win against a Shanghai Dragons team, versus the Florida Mayhem, who had players flying in 3 days before the preseason. Teams are players that haven't played together for a few weeks at a time. And let's be real. So I want to address 2 things, 2 keys to victory here for the Florida Mayhem that I think that they're going to address. The first one is the Mayhem supports sucked. I love Zeb. Okay. I love Zeb Asai. I think he's awesome, but he's not a good Mercy. He's had a month of playing Mercy on a LAN environment and scrimming and working towards that. That's a pretty simple fix overall, in my opinion. The bigger asterisk here is Swoosh, right? At the end of the day, when you look at where the biggest weaknesses were is they played against teams with really strong tank lines, and they themselves didn't have a strong. You've got a guy who played, with Movistar Riders as Genji main, and all of a sudden now he's main tanking on Winston, and you're like, oh, this is a flex moment for the Florida Mayhem, and they got punished for that in the preseason, rightfully so. But I don't think that the Mayhem are playing as strong of a tank line as they did in the preseason, and so they win. I think it's 3-1. I'm pretty confident in it. And again, I think Logix also knows what people are saying about him, and I think he's ready to show up and say, hey, Tavik, I got your back. I got your back. We're a solid duo DPS team again. And like I said, I love Boston. I love Moneyball. And they're a pick for me for a franchise that I love what they're doing. But they're one of the first teams to say, you know what, we're not going to ride on the preseason on individual skill like just about every other team did that had any sort of core. It's like, we're going to come here and we're going to try strategies that we've learned in practice. Even if it was just one strategy, they're coming in with strategy. And I think that's the long-term play for Overwatch League, is not how good individually are your players, it's how well do you run the plays. And at the end of the day, I think Boston has a lot to go from there. But in the meantime, like the Florida Mayhem, they are a good team. They've got weak tanks and they've got a weak Mercy, but it's not so much to make the difference that Logix and Tavik can't take down the Boston Uprising.
Right. I mean,
I'll be the first one to tweet ZP when they win, by the way. I'll be the first one to tweet ZP
if we're playing the tweet thing here, I mean, we'll go both ways. I mean, first of all, you're making me go against my preseason predictions way back when, where obviously I was also going, what's up with Boston? But the AM, they've had, again, you just look at the historically and where they've been, it's sort of like, I do want to clarify one thing, though, because I think this gets lost in the narrative. I think Logix has been playing fine. The issue is that this fits to win in the last few months. They've needed Logix to play otherworldly. I don't think it's fair to expect Logix to always play like some otherworldly god. I think he's all throughout, even the games they've lost, I think for the most part, he's played well. It's just there's a difference between playing well and carrying the game, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's been Logix's fault when they've lost. It's anything but. Florida's issues go significantly.
This guy just said Boston was going to be number 7, and he doesn't even want to pick him here. To me, the team that was number 2 in EU contenders.
End of season standings are way different than winning in week. That's so different. That's
I 100% agree with you. I wouldn't even be super surprised if Boston got to 7. I'm a little surprised, but not super, so it wouldn't fall out of my chair. But the team that goes to map 7 in the EU contenders in season 1, I think is able to beat this Boston roster, no problem. That's all I can say.
I mean, that's what I've been saying for a long time. I don't know. This was a good one. This was actually a little bit better than I thought it was. It's pretty much like right down the line, 2-2 on this one. So I like this one. But we are running.
Yeah, but I had Deathblow on my side. So.
But you also have me on the side. But we are very quickly running out of time. We're actually overtime right now. But so we're gonna jump to the last question. I know I'm upsetting some people with that, but I'm sorry. But we just got the announcement earlier today that we are going to be able to buy the Overwatch League skins, which is awesome, which is what we've all been waiting for. But they are $5 a skin, which there's been a lot of discussion about that. So, ZP, we'll start with you. Literal buy or sell Overwatch League skins for $5.
I think if you're a big fan of the team, you will be buying. As much as $5 is a case where people sort of flinch at it, I think they only flinch at it because in Overwatch, the precedent has been set where you get things in huge amounts of loot boxes, or you're able to just get it from, playing naturally. If you look at standards to other games, $5 for one particular skin really isn't that bad. You also add in the entire part where the tokens that you buy are going directly to support the teams based on buying it. I don't actually think this is that unreasonable. I understand why people are upset because the people are completionists, right? They go in and they go, yes, we want to buy everything. We want to have the entire full set now, and that's expensive. But if you look at how things are going, you're going to be able to earn a lot of tokens for free. That much is pretty clear. And $5 for one skin, most people rotate through 4 or 5 heroes. They're not playing every hero in the roster. Not every hero in the roster is even viable. So I don't know. I just don't think it's that unreasonable.
Yeah, but I want my mystery heroes to be decked out, ZP. Deathblow, buy or literal buy or sell $5 skins.
literally already bought one, so I guess I've got to buy. You know, listen, I feel like we're just going to be setting up Left Guy for his second millennial rant of the episode. But
you thought avocado toast was bad.
This is in the ballpark of what I expected them to cost. I don't know why are people surprised. I don't understand. Blizzard needs a piece of this. Overwatch League needs a piece of this. The team needs a piece of this. And there's added value. You're not just buying a skin. You're buying the ability to represent and to promote and to support your team. It's like buying a jersey. How expensive are football jerseys? Like, they're out of this world expensive, and I don't buy that it's just because it's a different fabric, right? There's meaning to it, and there's other people that need to get a piece of the sale. It's not a bad price at all to me. It's right in the ballpark. I would have been upset at, like, you know, $10. I think like they could have gone to like 6 or 7, and I don't think I would have, you know, blinked an eye. All I'll say is I'm glad that you get like tier-based pricing, right? So if you want to spend a bunch of money, you get a little bit of a break of it, or a little bit of a break for it. So I don't know. I'm happy with the price. I have no problems with it. I'm not going to buy those stupid Dallas Fuel skins anyways.
Kicked, I know you kind of Nostradamus this price, so are you literal buying or selling on these?
I mean, Blizzard here is doing what they do best, is pricing things at the high part of fair. And that's what a good gaming company does, is you find that threshold for fair prices, and you find the tippity top of that, and that's where you go. And I said $3 to $5. Sure enough, we're talking like $3.80 something to $5. Like, not too bad. Overwatch has some advantage. Number one, if you say you're a completionist, sit down, because you don't have every skin right now. You don't. I'm sorry. You don't. So, like,
someone out there does. Somebody the internet. People have all the achievements.
Wow. So like I said, right? Somebody had the people who have all the skins are not saying, "Oh no, I can't get this one now." Like, they've already. This isn't going to stop them.
They already busted out their pocket.
And Jeff Kaplan is he's sitting on his golden toilet saying, "God bless you, sir, who thinks that it's really important to be a completionist in an era with microtransactions." But I'll say this even more. At the end of the day, what's important for this is that people are able to get the skins that they want for the heroes that they play for a reasonable amount of money. You get a free one right away. There's gonna be more opportunities. There's gonna be sales. It's not like it's always $5 every time you want to buy a skin. And so it's an easy buy here, but not because the price is fair, but because it's a good concept.
For sure on that one. I know, like, my first thing when I saw people say that they're completionist is, okay, go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
$2,600, please, or sorry, $1,200, please and thank you.
Go for it. Left Guy, last word here for this topic and for the entire show.
Time to do some point mongering, just a little bit. Well, first of all, I believe in the Overwatch League, so I'm going with all out swag, and I think that while I'm really sporting the physical stuff, I think that this just gives me an opportunity to support the New York Excelsior and to be able to say Excelsior even more often while I'm in game, because of people admiring in competitive queue and in quick play my Excelsior related merchandise in game.
You had a really boo sound effect.
Finger was on the button. Okay. I love the Excelsior as much as the next guy, but you're like 40 miles away from me, and all I hear is
hey, listen, I had to do what I can, but no, in all seriousness, it makes sense to me. Yeah, it is kind of what I expected, and I think that the key thing to keep in mind is that this is something that is going to be giving back to those teams. So it is direct support. It's not just wearing their jersey, their off-brand jersey that they never got any money for. So I will be buying probably some of them, a few of them. But I'm going to be trying to support my teams in other ways as well.
For sure. I mean,
So, bye?
There you go. You got your extra point for saying actual buy. But that is going to be the end of the show, and I don't think my sound effects work, but I'm going to press the button. No, it's definitely not working. So let's go over the final score. So, unsurprisingly, in fourth place, we had Deathblow, who I think is muted right now, or maybe I'm muted.
No, I'm muted.
No, yeah, you muted yourself.
No shame about it. I'm not mad at all.
In third place, even though he tried to buy so many points at the end, I tried. You just needed to say it just a few more times. We had Left Guy with 87 points. And a very narrow, close one at the end. We had ZP with 88 points, but we saw the underdog who declared himself as the underdog here. We saw KickedTripod with the 89th point, who actually got that 89th point because he called out Left Guy for making...
I called him out first. I said play the boost sound effect before anyone said anything. That's
Put ZP in third for point grubbing. Put him in third for point grubbing. Change it.
Yeah.
I mean, third would still be above you, Deathblow. Just saying.
No shame. We both got green walls, my friend. We both got green walls. We win.
This is what it boiled down to. None of what any of you said mattered. I knew that Kicked was going to be on my side for Excelsior, so I was just giving you guys arbitrary points. Kicked had won it. Kicked won it from the beginning. No, but in all seriousness, congratulations, KickedTripod. You have your sellout, shell out, whatever you want to do. Congratulations moment. The floor is yours, sir.
I'm going to take 15 seconds and I want to give the rest of my minute 45 to ZP. And so here's why. So I want to say thank you for the platform. I never in a million years thought that I would be able to talk about Overwatch with as smart of people as ZP and Gillfrost. And I really appreciate the points, but ZP literally took so many of my points, bent me over, and just spanked me with them. He just did. And like, as much as I'm like, you know what? I don't think these are bad points though. And I'm proud of myself. At the end of the day, like ZP's the king. And so thank you, Overwatch League Daily Show. And then KickedTripod. And besides that, ZP needs to take the rest of it because in my mind, he's the winner.
Well, that's a much better outro than I was going to do, where I was simply going to take pity on Deathblow for the constant pitying and then give the time, if I had won, to Deathblow entirely and say that I'd give my points to him as some sort of archon, and it would be his time to reverse the karma of the show. And yeah.
So do I get 30 seconds? Is that how it works? Like everybody gets?
Yes, I'm going to give points to you because I can't follow up what KickedTripod just said there. I can't live up to that billing that he just put up there. So Deathblow, you are the true hero.
All right, well then I will just say that the Houston Outlaws are going to obliterate.
Well, everyone, that's the show here. Thank you for being. Thank you for watching Around the Payload. I don't know what you know. What I'm taking Deathblow's remaining time and giving it to Old Man Left Guy. What you get the last word, Old Man Left Guy.
I just have one thing to say, and that is this. That's it.
Well, I've got to say, from before start to I'm sure after finish, this was the craziest show of Around the Payload that we have. Thank you, everyone who tuned in and who watched. You can find everything, all the links and stuff on highnoonpodcast.com. Huge shout-outs to the guests, Left Guy, ZP, Deathblow, and KickedTripod. Give yourselves a pat on the back and a round of applause for yourself. There we go. Huge shout-outs to everyone. That's going to be it, though, guys. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thanks for every guest for being on here. And tune in next week and join us Around the Payload. Bye-bye.